friends. This is Sam Cheney reporting for Weaponized News. Today is June 12th, 2022, and we're overwhelmed once again on this Sunday with incredible news from all around the world. Here in America, the government is getting out of control, but this show is going to be about empowering yourself, empowering your communities. How can we overcome the overwhelming negativity coming from the mainstream corporate media, from maybe even those around you in your personal life? Because there is a lot of negativity now after 2.5+ years of this pandemic that we've been in. And it just seems like negative, but we're going to try to raise that vibe, raise that consciousness level on this show, bring you some positive feelings on this Sunday, some solutions to what you can do in your local community. I have Thomas from Alpha Mega Energy, our Asian correspondent, on the line, and we have Miss USA, California. How you guys doing tonight?
Miss Wheelchair USA, California. Yes, nice to be here back on Weaponized News. Nice to welcome our wonderful guests, so full of positive energy and uplifting hope and spirit, campaigning for the rights and freedoms and inclusion of our disabled people, and fighting that inclusion battle, which is fantastic to see. I'm a big inclusion person myself, and
Deborah Vick. They cut off your last name on my description, but I went Deborah Vick. How are you doing this evening?
I am doing great this evening. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here today.
Hey, thank you for coming on the show.
Yes, wonderful to have Miss Wheelchair, California. We're rooting for, cheering on our California representative for the nation. So you got our vote. Go get them, right? So fantastic. So thank you for coming on. It's wonderful to have these kind of guests. I'm a big fan of doing this kind of work. Our little startup in the third world in Cambodia, we started like a division inside of our startup making 3D prosthetics. We started printing 3D prosthetics and had one staff full-time on that. And we made a new way to make a 3D prosthetic legs, 3D printed, right? 3D printing. So, and it's a big challenge to do legs because of the bending and the twisting and the continuous lateral pressure and whatnot. And we had to find the right kind of material to solve that, which nobody solved it before. And it turned out the secret was actually on the one California NGO up on the shelf behind the director's head when I was in the meeting, as he's saying, impossible, you can't do this. And the solution was right behind him. And because I had the attitude of, fighting impossible and just hating this word impossible and hating this idea that it can't be done and that we can't solve these kind of challenges. Because I had that mindset, I could see the solution right behind him. I was insisting instead of listening to this kind of negativity. So, I really admire, quote unquote, it's not the best word, disabled people. I find them to be always innovators is what I say about them, right? They're always innovating. So I just seem to have this connection, this mental, spiritual connection. I feel that I very much admire, a kind of a relation, because I'm always innovating, because always in that zone. And I just noticed that. I mean, disabled people, they're forced into innovation. They always have to invent something, some new way that's different that everybody else takes for granted. So I really like that. I really like that mind, that place. I really appreciate that. So I'm really looking forward to us being fully funded, that we could do more, that we could do these kind of programs in these places of great need. And
it's something you can bring youth into. One of the STEAM programs that I've been involved with, we talk about artificial limbs and children who have made 3D prosthetics for kids across the globe, right? And I'm a maker, I'm a STEAM educator, so I love hands-on programs and teaching universal design to youth so they understand at an early age how to incorporate different concepts, different abilities, and thinking outside the box, like you did with the artificial limb. You had to think of, what the end result is of an artificial limb that works. and some of the other elements that were considered as an element. So you knew where you wanted to go, and you figured out how to get there. So I did it on micro stuff, graphic elements, just like you did.
Our audio went bad again.
I think you got to move the mic a little bit closer or something. It just got
I was trying to like keep the recoil from coming back. Like something is.
You're working with a new soundboard over there. Our audio went bad again.
It was working. Well, let me see if I press something and I didn't know about. Oh yeah. Okay. Let's see.
So Deborah, tell us your story. How?
Can you hear me?
Yes, now I hear you very well. That's good.
I can't hear you.
Tell us your story about how you became disabled. Were you born that way? Did you have some type of accident? What has been what's your story?
It's an ongoing process. Am I echoing?
No, it's good.
Okay, great. So it's been a long, ongoing process for me. I grew up traditionally being able to do a lot of activities that people would able to do with able-bodied. I hiked the Grand Canyon, Zion, Bryce Canyon by the time I was 10. But I was extremely hypermobile. Nobody thought anything of it. In 7th grade, I destroyed my knees in track and field. I was doing the triple jump. I landed in a pit. My legs went forward and my knees went backwards. And I was on crutches from that day forward. And I wasn't diagnosed with Ehlers-Danlos until I was 24 years old.
What is it called again? Say that again.
Was significantly impacted. At that point, I was in full leg braces, back brace.
But say that again. What is it? What is it called again?
Which one?
What you were not diagnosed with till 24.
Ehlers-Danlos. EHLERS. Danlos. DANLOS.
Okay.
And it's also a spectrum disorder. It's a series of connective tissue diseases. Once the tissue stretches, it cannot retighten. So in my case, almost all my joints either sublux or dislocate, except for what's fused. And I'm fused from C2 down to T2 and part of my lower back as well. And a lot of my internal organs are impacted. My heart, my GI system, and my lungs are all impacted. And I have a series of secondary disorders that are common to get when you have Ehlers-Danlos, including dysautonomic dysfunction, which means I can't regulate my blood pressure well enough. And I will have instances where I lose consciousness from low blood pressure or high blood pressure. Most of the time it's low blood pressure issues. And then 5 years ago, about 5.5 years ago, I was diagnosed with myasthenia gravis. That's MYSTHENI, and gravis, GRAVIS. That's an autoimmune disease. It's a neuromuscular autonomic disorder. So my body is attacked by my antibodies. And what ends up happening is that the messages from the brain to the muscles are impacted. And so it means grave vascular weakness. It impacts my ability to move. It impacts my ability at times to breathe or even swallow. So it can be serious, or you can, depending on where you're on the spectrum with that as well, be pretty functional. I'm kind of in between. So I live between infusion treatments every other week. I get plasma-based therapy. So for anybody who donates plasma, I thank you very much, because that's what helps keep me alive, along with several other autoimmune treatments.
Now, what is this caused by?
So the Ehlers-Danlos is a genetic, is believed to be genetic. They really don't know yet about the myasthenia gravis. It is a very rare condition. It's even more rare to have myasthenia and Ehlers-Danlos together. It's not typical. And so they don't know yet. There's a lot of research being done for it still. It happens to be MG Awareness Month. And myasthenia does fall under the umbrella of muscular dystrophy. And there's a lot of similarities between MG and MS and ALS. There's a lot of similar impacts. I mean, when I was diagnosed, that particular day, my whole face went drooping. Looked like I had a stroke. My eyes were drooping. I was seeing double vision. When I was speaking, my speech was slow, slurred. Nobody can understand me. I mean, I couldn't even understand what I was trying to say. And that was the day that I was diagnosed. But I have good days and I have not so good days. And it's a balance. Big balancing act. Even today, my boys just went off to Boy Scout camp. I normally go with them. And I've been a scout leader for the past 11 years. But because of my conditions and the competition coming up, it was important that I stayed home and try to get my health back up to condition to functioning ability.
Is there any? It sounds like a Bell's palsy type event. Is there any relation to Bell's palsy?
That's actually a lot of times we have to get tested to make sure it's not Bell's palsy. But again, a lot of similarities with that. They all have a lot of commonalities with the neurological impact, as well as the facial, muscular loss of control, and even the breathing and the speaking as well.
Have you looked into any of this, any of your conditions being vaccine injuries?
No, because these happened way before any of the relationships to vaccines.
Well, you took childhood vaccines, like the rest of it.
I don't see any connection with that, especially with the myasthenia when that came about. That's only a few years ago, right? And it wasn't in relation to anything. But I do know once you have one autonomic condition, you are more susceptible to other autonomic diseases. And the hardest thing is getting a diagnosis, especially for women, because often our symptoms aren't seen. Right? I have a wheelchair. I have full leg braces, back brace, and neck brace. It's my disabling conditions are my weakness, or my breathing issues, right? Or my severe fatigue or the severe pain. And that can be very hard to communicate with medical professionals. And especially when you're highly functioning with these conditions. Because I don't look what I look like on my medical file. And my medical file looks very different than who I am. But it's because of my determination to live my life to the fullest of my ability. So it's very beneficial for my mental state to be very active, but it can be very challenging to get medical care when you're saying, I can't do X, Y, and Z. I can do A, B, and C, but often there's this disconnect of trying to be heard and be listened to. And it's something that I've been really working on lately, mainly because I had several setbacks this past year because I didn't advocate well enough for myself, right? I didn't speak up soon enough.
Do you have a patient advocate with you, or you are your patient advocate?
I am my patient advocate. And that is, it's unfortunately the reality for most of us that are dealing with chronic illnesses that we become our own advocate. And I gotta tell you, it can be really hard to be your own advocate at the worst times. I went into the ER a month ago having to advocate that I was going through myasthenia gravis exacerbation. I knew I needed plasmapheresis. I knew I needed plasma exchange. I knew I needed it. I packed up when I went to the ER. I literally packed up my crafts and all my supplies to have something to do because I knew I was going to the hospital for at least a couple of days. And I was there for a week. But I had to go walk in, or technically wheel in, and state what my issue was, what I needed done, and why. And I was very fortunate. I found a doctor there that was very receptive, but it's not always the case, right? And it's really hard to be an advocate for yourself when you're at
if you're going through some type of traumatic event, which is a medical crisis, then it is extremely difficult to advocate for yourself.
And it's hard to be patient when you're in that much pain. I'm not gonna lie. When I'm in a lot of pain, my patience level kind of goes down, right? And trying to communicate at that point can be hard. My husband does come with me in a lot of these like really significant situations where I'm trying to advocate for a long time to get something. He sometimes just comes with me just to validate that I am doing something, that I am trying to do something, and what the real issue is, right? It shouldn't be needed by any means, it should not be needed. But there are times when I just bring him along to simply validate. My microphone's making my dog walking. To validate what's happening.
So what's been your experience with the? I'm getting a little bit of feedback there. Had it kind of loud. What's been your experience with the opiates? They used to just hand out opiates. So did they try to get you opiates for painkillers? What's going on with that situation?
I did have opiates.
Pain management.
I did have opiates at an early age. I still have an intrathecal pain pump, which is a surgically implanted pump that delivers pain medication directly to the spinal cord. I honestly,
that sounds painful.
once it's in and you heal, it's a whole lot better because you can use a lot less medication and you can get a lot stronger medication directly to the spinal cord, bypassing the bloodstream, and you get a lot less side effects. So it's a lot safer, it's more controlled, it's a constant level of medication, and it's not something that you can take extra, right? It's actually a machine that controls the medication. I do have the ability to give a little bit extra, 10%, 6 times a day, which I don't normally do unless I'm really active. But in my case, I was encouraged to incorporate Eastern and Western medicine at an early age. By the time I was 28, I reached what Western medicine had for pain management. I already had the strongest pain medication that I could take. And other than the snail poison that is called Prialt, which I didn't really like too much, which is technically the strongest pain medication in the United States. But, there's...
What is it called again?
Prialt is the strongest. I don't use Prialt. It didn't work well with my body. But there's Prialt and there's sufentanil and there's other types of medications that can go through a machine in the spinal cord, connected to the spinal cord, right? And you can get it filled every week, every month, or 2 months, depending on the machine that you have. And it allows you to get a constant level of medication without the side effects. And honestly, it's given me a second lease at life. I will be honest, I've had challenges with them. I've had some that have stopped working. I've had some that have been, one that got infected when I was 24 weeks pregnant with my younger son that had to be removed. But overall, it has been tremendously beneficial. And I incorporate mindset programs. I've been doing meditation and acupuncture for over 20 years now. I do what's called gua sha and cupping, different techniques for releasing tension and toxins in the system. I've been doing those. I have my own home cupping system. So I do the trigger points. I do meditations, mindset, play my singing bowls. I do a combination, and pretty much every type of trigger point device that is out there, I probably have, or massage tool. I have a huge box of all these different elements or tools that I use for releasing the tension. So ultimately, the opiate situation is a challenge. And I'm going to say that because I know of people this past year alone that have taken their lives for not having pain management, right? For the extreme pain that they were in and the lack of medical care. And it breaks my heart to see people so young giving up the fight because the pain is so severe. So I think the way it's going right now, there's been such a huge spectrum of everything. And ultimately, I think it really comes down to the whole person approach. I mean, whether it's medical care, whether it's access to schools, or whether it's access to the government, it's a whole person approach. What does this individual need as a whole person to be the best version of themselves? And I think often we're losing that, right? We're losing this whole person approach. And that's how we become an inclusive society. is by looking at people and saying, how can we make this work for you? What can we do to make this happen? And often I think we're losing that in a lot of places.
It feels like there's a fine line between legitimate opiate use and then for pain, which a lot of people are in and they need that to relieve their pain, to turning people into junkies.
Well, and that's, it is a line, and the thing is a lot of times, when we talk about pain management, right, you have these issues where we're not treating the whole situation, right? And we're not treating all the pain. We're not giving all the tools for pain management. And when people don't have that, sometimes they turn to alternate methods that can lead to addictions or things that are not good for them, right? And so that's why I keep on saying we need to look at everything. How do we help somebody be who they are, right? And for me,
it feels like our medical system is not even close to that now, though.
And that's part of where my inclusions programs want to be, is not just the schools, but communicating with the doctors, with the nurses, with staff members to say, hey, let's look at this whole picture. How do we help this person be who they are and give them the tools to be who they are? And often that's dismissed. Even one of my conditions that causes me to lose consciousness, people automatically want to assume it's medication related. And it's not. It's my autonomic system cannot regulate itself, right? I do IV fluids daily. I do other things daily to help regulate my system. I have medications for when it goes too high, medications for it goes too low. My service dog is great at alerting me. I'm not always good at listening, but he's really good at alerting me. But the reality is, it's such a balance in daily life. And I think often it's hard to communicate that with a medical professional who sees you for 5 minutes or 10 minutes, right? It's hard to say, this is what I'm capable of. This is where I need to get to again. And where I'm at right now is not my norm. And this is where I could be. And I need you to help me get here. And that voice is not always heard. And so that is definitely something I'd like to help change, to change that narrative of inclusion and listening to the patient.
What alternative treatments have you tried? Have you tried anything quote unquote alternative? It's amazing these days what the so-called health industry and these so-called health officials, which I mean they're banning. You're talking about we need a more inclusive, a more whole person approach,
Right.
and it seems today the pharma industry, which just happens to be the most criminally convicted industry in American history, with over 8,000 drugs that the FDA has approved in the past that they're giving to people that they've had to recall. They've been forced to recall over 8,000 of their approved drugs, and they're supposed to only be approved if they're safe. And yet 8,000 of their approvals have been recalled due to the amount of diseases and neurological conditions and side effects.
I'm so sorry. Well, Peanut.
Boy,
That dog works for the FDA. He's mad about that.
Yeah.
I actually have my dog here. Just to let you know, Deborah, I have my dog sitting right here too, even though it may bark as well.
I feel bad for any time somebody comes to my door, my dog barks. It could be somebody he loves.
That's a good dog. That's a security dog for you there.
I thought it was the California health officials breaking down your door for talking about alternative treatments. Right?
So
it may be banned. Acupuncture may be banned soon.
Yeah, so they've banned drugs like some of the safest drugs in human history that were on the WHO safe medicines list, and now the pharma industry has even banned famous Martin Shkreli. They banned this guy, saying that the reason they supposedly banned him was because He prevented access to life-saving drugs. The California so-called health officers have banned access in many cases to some of the safest record drugs in history, like ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine. Have you considered trying, alternative treatments?
So I've been doing acupuncture for 20 plus years. I did chiropractor, but that was bad for my connective tissue disorder. But I've been using acupuncture since I was 26, 26. I've been, during COVID, I have not been doing it as much. Prior to COVID, I was doing acupuncture weekly. And, I was just, during Pain Awareness Day, there was a thing where we can call and speak to our legislators to get acupuncture and chiropractor being covered under Medicaid and Medicare. And that was something that I did call about because it's not enough sessions, right? You get like one session is covered and that's it. I personally benefited greatly from acupuncture. I do use a prescription Marinol, which is a synthetic version of the marijuana for management of my pain and some of my nausea and some of those things. That is FDA approved, so that's covered by insurance. In California, the getting anything from the dispensaries, you don't know what you're getting, and it's not, the tax is 30% higher in California now for that, so it made it really cost prohibitive for a lot of times. So my last time I ended up getting Marinol, which is very helpful for my.
That's funny what you say. The actual legalization made it cost prohibitive. That's very interesting that you say that because that's true now, right? But so we care. We're going to legalize it for people that really need it, but yet we're going to tax the hell out of it to make it cost prohibitive for people to actually access this medicine.
Well,
amazing. That's California for you, though. I mean,
but their whole propaganda wasn't saying if we legalize it, then the prices are going to drop, and then there's not going to be an incentive for the drug dealers to deal this. That was their entire.
They've created a bigger black market than ever, and like she says, you don't really know because it's not regulated, and
you can't go across state lines because you don't know what states allow for usage. Where Marinol, and again, this was a medication I didn't even know about until I was in such extreme pain that I could no longer function. And then they mentioned it. I'm like, well, thanks. I could have used this a couple of years ago, but thank you. And I didn't know I can go across state lines because it's a prescription medication, right? And it's FDA approved. And that is something that is important, especially like how I'm going across state lines. I'm going to other states that may not have marijuana approved. So
yeah,
and I have used a lot of homeopathic treatments. Unfortunately, it's a really difficult balance with my system because I'm a complex case. I have a lot of different things going on at once, and some of my conditions can utilize certain medications or treatments or homeopathic medicines or prescriptions, and others can't. And there's a lot of times there's this clash between the two. So I've been trying to find ways, and that is a big reason why I started my mindfulness practice, was to learn how to help create that mindset of positivity and moving forward in spite of or alongside all of my other challenges, because I got all of them.
Here's your website. We'll throw that up. Victorious. I like that. Victorious.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, this is really about creating this movement of inclusion, of incorporating people together, of uniting people with all abilities to be able to be counted and part of society, right? And not only empowering people with disabilities, helping people with disabilities gain public speaking skills, life advocacy skills, job skills, interview type of skills, but to also reach out to the corporate world and create inclusion programs in these spaces so that we learn how to create a space for people of all different types of abilities. And often it's overlooked, or there's not even space created for us. Because many of us, we can't work full time. But so many of us still want to give back to our communities, still want to be part of society, and ultimately want to make a difference. And often we're not given that opportunity to do so. And that's really what I want to see happen, whether it's through my title work this year as Miss Wheelchair California, USA, or as one of the founders of Victorious. I want to see more inclusion. I want to see people of all abilities represented. And even in the advocacy community, I want to make sure we're having more diversity and representation, because I am way too aware of the fact that one's income, one's geographical location, and even ethnic and racial background can impact access to medical care. Nonetheless, knowing how to advocate for your needs. So all of these impact diagnoses, being heard, getting treatments, and getting treatments at an early enough stage that you can prevent further damage. And that's something I'm still working through. I mean, even my last neck surgery that was a year ago was about 2 years too late, and I have likely lifelong damage to some of my nerves because it wasn't treated early enough. And I don't know how to speak up. And I have access to good doctors. So it's something that's always in my mind of making sure we're giving people the tools to advocate for themselves, but also working with companies to learn how to interact, engage, and listen to the speakers.
I do believe that a major issue is the advocacy, and like you say, if you're injured and you're suffering from whatever medical condition, it's extremely difficult to be your own advocate. So everyone going into this medical system, no matter what the issue, needs a healthcare advocate there, someone healthy to speak to these doctors, nurses, and so on to navigate through this very complicated system for sure.
Absolutely. And
Thomas, I think Thomas wants to jump in here and ask some questions. What?
Yeah, you're talking about more advocacy. I think there definitely needs to be more advocacy, and there's some interesting issues. I'm asking Sam to share some articles that I'm finding, and I'd like to hear from you about some of these kind of more interesting topics, also about discrimination against disabled people. I mean, there's actually a wild history in the
That's eugenics right there, Thomas. That's kill all the disabled people. They don't offer anything to society. Get rid of them.
Yeah, there's these the eugenics movements, right, amongst the globalist elite, right? Famous United Nations people, and of course the Bush Carlisle group, Prescott Bush, and all of these funders, Foundation, etc. That Adolf Hitler financing him, orchestrating him into power, and now we see the same exact groups and people and their kids, etc. now orchestrating Zelensky into power. And you see, this Yuval Harari, these transhumanists and eugenicists at the World Economic Forum, talking about hacking the body, and people should not have free will anymore, and mocking this free will, and really disdain this idea, and they want to do away with disabilities, is what he said. But he's talking about depopulation at the same time. Is really
how they get rid of them is they kill them.
Diabolical stuff. And you see this, in the past, they've taken wild actions. I mean, Greece is famous for this. Any sign of disability, they throwing these babies over the cliff and these kind of things. And we had also Inclusion, this organization called Inclusion London, what they were called, and the doctors of Inclusion London were issuing do not resuscitate orders for disabled COVID patients, and this was 2020, they were doing this, and they got caught doing this. I'm not sure. I haven't looked into all of the details if they got in trouble for doing this or not, but they got stung, and even Forbes magazine was writing about this, and other mainstream media publications.
Of course, it's illegal to do. And
yeah, what can you tell us about the discrimination and problems like this? And we've heard about this, discrimination against other groups, and even comments on social media of people saying, I won't say which group. I'll just leave it out for now. But they're saying, hey, if I get some patient that's XYZ political affiliation, whatever, and I'm giving them wrong treatments, or so happy to do that, or whatnot. There's these kind of things going on. What can you tell us about the challenges that the disabled community are facing in the healthcare system?
I mean, the challenges are real, and I remember when the DNR came out, because if I get COVID, it's not when I'll probably have at some point when or if I get it, I will likely be hospitalized. It's I can't say I wouldn't be. For me personally, I got hospitalized after a cold after I went skiing. So that's a reality for me.
Yeah, but how's your immune system? Your immune system's not so great, right?
No, I don't have an immune system pretty much because we need the medications to kill what's left of not kill, but subdue what's left of my immune system so that it's not attacking my body. One of the medications that I'm getting soon that I used to get is Rituxan, and it really kills out a lot of your immune system so that your body's not attacking itself. So it decreases a lot of the weakness and fatigue, but it makes you more susceptible to infections and a lot less able to fight them. And when I get sick, a small cold, so whenever like, oh, it's just a flu, it's not just a flu for me. For me, if I get the flu, I get very sick. If I went skiing in February, March area, and I got a cold afterwards, it wasn't a significant cold, but it was enough to leave me bedridden for over a week, and then ended up having to use BiPAP to breathe throughout the day and night, and eventually going into the hospital about 4 weeks later for plasma pheresis exchange. So when I get sick, it's serious, right? And it's why I didn't go away this weekend with the boys, because I can't afford to get sick right now. And it's a real situation, right? And that sickness and being heard when you're sick is what's so hard. And so when you're talking about being of value and being heard is the biggest challenge in our advocacy elements, right? Is to be counted in the discussions. Because often legislators want to see numbers, which is great. And I understand how legislation works. And I understand in advocacy, numbers matter. I get it. But the reality is there are people that want to do something and want to be included and often are dismissed. And in my case, I get more respect than I think others do, but I still get dismissed a lot of times as well. It's still a fight every time. And every time I got to go to a doctor, I've got to reestablish who I am, what I do, and my background, right? Because I did go to college. I did go to graduate school. I did all of 5 units of a law degree. I was 5 units away from a law degree before I had a medical challenge and was not able to complete within the time limitation. Still fighting it, trying to anyway, to complete that last 5 units of my degree. But, I know there's a certain level of respect or communication that I'm able to get, but I have to prove it all the time. And that in itself is tiring, right? But to really have a space at the table, we're not there yet, right? I mean, we're getting there. We're getting there in some of the programs. We're getting there in some places like the park that I was showing people on LinkedIn that I was involved with, that I volunteered with, and I got to see the opening of. And that was beautiful inclusion park. On Tuesday, I'm getting from my city mayor a proclamation for my senior graduates, and was invited to apply to be part of an advisory committee, right? So there are elements that there are starting to be some inclusion, but it does require the advocates knowing how to communicate, doing so in a way that allows for us to shine without, I want to say, creating political strife so much so that people are more open to listening to what we're saying. And that's a challenge too, because most of the time we're very passionate because we've been fighting for life-saving treatments and want to get things changed. So
whatever happened to that? Remember they passed that right to try bill? Have you seen anybody actually using the right to try? Where they're saying, I think it was if there's experimental treatments available and somebody's facing a life-threatening condition, they're allowed to use experimental treatments in light of the COVID-19 vaccine, which is an experimental treatment, but they say it's safe and effective and we can't talk anything bad about it. So have you seen anybody use any other right to try type of treatments?
I know people have done work with, I haven't done it personally. I know people have done some work with, I'm losing my words here for trying to communicate. Part of my medical conditions is not always being able to say what I'm thinking. But they were able to use some work, but it wasn't actually in the United States. Some of the stem cells for some.
Yeah, I think that's what it was around, was stem cells, a lot of it. Yeah, stem cell treatment, yeah.
So I know there are some research, not so much in the United States, working with stem cells. It's really a challenge, right? Because even the medication, so a lot of times I advocate for the Orphan Drug Act, and that is for FDA approved medications to then be able to be researched and used for other rare diseases. Because there's over 7,000 rare diseases in this world that do not have any cures. And the majority of those affect children, and many can be fatal. And there's not I'm meeting parents or advocates that have lost their children and are still advocating for medical treatments so that somebody else doesn't go through the loss that they went through, right? And a lot of that comes from the Orphan Drug Act, and that is something I advocate for regularly on Rare Disease Week, because it is so important that we. I see what you brought up there.
So the NPR says that people with high-risk disabilities feel left out by California's vaccine system. Do you think that's the case? And if so,
So I actually don't know about. So when it came for the COVID vaccine, I've been getting calls right away that I qualified for it and that I should be getting the vaccines. I have gotten the vaccine and the boosters. I have not gotten the fourth one, but I have gotten some. And I was called right away, and I did receive that call. And my family was not able to get vaccinated right away. So my younger son chose to stay home and do virtual schooling to protect me from getting. Maybe he's vaccinated now, but they're trying to keep me as safe as possible. And it's a challenge because I can tell you often, even in the medical system as a whole, it's very hard to feel heard or included. And I'm not going to lie about that because I've had a lot of challenges, especially with my chronic pain, right? That's not something you can see, or the chronic weakness or fatigue. Again, not something you can see. I mean, my last hospitalization, my communication was really low compared to my normal abilities. I kept on expressing there was something wrong. And I kept on being told, well, you sound intelligent enough. Intelligent enough is not my norm. I can't speak. I can't get words out. And there was a lot of more advocacy than I planned to do in the hospital to be heard. So I don't just think it's vaccine. I mean, in my case, I did get information about the vaccine early. But I do think often we find not being heard in the medical system. I mean, I was on a group, I'm in a group for myasthenia gravis, and I'm talking with a woman who's in Texas who cannot find a doctor who will treat the myasthenia gravis, and she can barely move, right? And there's a point where she's going to need an ambulance to take her to a hospital or a adult center, full care type of a thing. And getting heard and being truly listened to I think, is the biggest challenge, whether it's in the medical community or the corporate arena, right? It's our voice of being heard and listen to what we need to function. And that, I think, is one of the hardest and most frustrating elements in life, is to know what we're doing is being seen, know that we're being heard, and that we count. Right? Because often we're left to feel like we're not of value when our opinions, our voices, or our space is being created for us.
Right. Well, what do you think about this Yuval Harari guy? Do you follow the World Economic Forum and what's going on and what they're doing? Like Forbes magazine, I noticed in this article here that I just showed here, I'll do it again, and they're talking about these do not resuscitate orders given by this so-called Inclusion London group, right? And we so often see in politics this massive subversion of these kind of topics. And we see the Nazi movement, it didn't really die just when Germany supposedly lost the war. And then, through Operation Paperclip, America immigrated, took in all of these scientists and Nazi scientists, so that they have all the military secrets, all of the military technology, get all of these scientists, and we have the scientists now. Now we have the technology. Now we're even more powerful. But these people brought the culture, the indoctrination with them, this supremacy and this kind of things, and they were doing this, right? There's 300,000 disabled people. They just executed them, and they have this right for their pro-death panels, their pro-eugenics, getting rid of these people. And then you see, the Nazis, they dismissed disabled people as useless eaters, and right away, we're on in society. We have this guy, Yuval Harari. He's the chief advisor to Klaus Schwab, the World Economic Forum, and he's promoting humanism. He's talking these crazy, outrageous things. I think we are gods. We're literally making ourselves gods. The elite are doing, not the rest of humanity. And he's talking about the useless eaters, and we need to reduce the human population down to less than 1 billion people. We're going to do that. There's too many, we don't need these people, and he's slandering. And so we see this that this guy is really like an outrageous Nazi type, Klaus Schwab. He happens to be the son of he's the son of Adolf Hitler's nuclear weapons program director, who was building their atomic bomb, atomic weapons. He's literally the son of this guy, indoctrinated through this more than probably anybody else. The top elite echelon of the Nazi party, the Nazi genocidal movement. And here's his advisor, and Klaus Schwab is seen with him in the video, smiling right now. In this picture, he's probably talking to Klaus Schwab, smiling and loving everything that this guy says. And they're very much against, the old people. Talks about getting rid of them earlier. He says that they have no use to society. They're worthless people. They have worthless lives. This kind of. So here in society, people don't really understand the levels of discrimination. They understand racism, but they don't understand the levels of discrimination against disabled people. And that there actually is this big movement, orchestrated movement, actually to do away with some of the people, which is very, very, very strange for me to see. Holocaust Encyclopedia going into this greatly, the history of this, and it hasn't just magically ended. America, this is Daily Mail also, America has a history of experimenting, experiments, illegal and unethical medical experiments on disabled citizens and prison inmates, including giving hepatitis to them and all kinds of other things, pandemic flu viruses.
The most most vulnerable are the easiest target.
Yeah, syphilis and all kinds of things. Are you hearing of anything about anything like that?
I'll be honest, you avoid a lot of those spaces for my own mental health and mindset. I'm also Jewish, so the Holocaust issues are sensitive for me. My ethnic and cultural background is very much connected to the Holocaust, and I am my ethnic background and where I'm from definitely would have been impacted if I was born a few generations ago. I probably would not be here today. Being Jewish and disabled, that would not have been very successful. And the reality is,
The Nazis want you dead, man.
in multiple categories, they would not like me. And the reality is, and this is something that we discussed today in Clubhouse, often when people talk about diversity inclusion, disability is not included. Even though anybody can become disabled at any time, and if any of us are lucky enough to reach our senior years, are likely to have some sort of disability and needing assistance. But we're not usually included, and often are not given what we need to be successful. And it's not just what we need to be successful, it's also what we need to live our life of to the fullest of our ability. And it could right now in the United States our system is designed.
Deborah, let me tell you, Deborah, they're bringing back this Nazi mindset here in America, in California. Let me warn you and tell you. Let me play, while we're on this thread, let me play the shocking video of Operation Homebound, LA County Public Health Department administering the COVID-19 vaccine to disabled individuals at the very beginning of this program. This is a disturbing video. Let me play this video while we're on this thread.
I'm gonna move in a little bit.
It's okay, Shirley. It's okay, Mom. It's okay. Just let her relax. It's okay. Let her come back.
Just one time a day, okay? One time is okay. It'll be good. And then you'll go to sleep.
Oh, it's good job, Shirley.
You are done.
Good job. Woo!
Informed consent. I guess that's informed consent. We just gave you a vaccination after this time, right? I guess that's informed consent.
Yeah, so with all the problems that are coming out now with this vaccination, quote vaccine, which I don't even think is, if you want to go get it, that's your free will, go get it. But as that video showed, they had the sheriff's department, and then since that video came out, that was so shocking that they had to disband that program, Operation Homebound. But I mean, they're forcing medical treatment on disabled people. You could tell they were mentally disabled people, and they were saying how great of a thing it was. And I don't think that's right. You need to give everyone fully informed consent on every medical treatment and procedure that they are given. And clearly that's not what was happening there in LA County. Any thoughts on that, Deborah? Informed consent. What are your thoughts on that?
I think you're muted here, Deborah.
Your audio's off there, Deborah.
I was muted.
There we
So
go.
I'm a advocate and say, was there parental or their person who was making medical consent?
Yeah, that's how they were able to do it. Yeah,
Because
their guardian or their parent. Yeah,
because they might not have the mental state to know, and that's why they have the guardians. I mean, even my sons when they were little, right? They had to be held down. My older one definitely had to be held down for his shots I mean, he just at age 4, all of a sudden didn't like needles. It was like really weird because one minute he was fine, the next minute he wasn't.
So does that ever make you think it's wrong that you have to hold someone down to give them injections? To me, that's just horrifying, and I would never do that to anyone.
My experience, but I also know how sick they can get without. This was the flu vaccine, and I know how sick they get without it, and I know how sick I get without it. I mean, I got hospitalized after a one of the flu vaccines because I had some underlying cold and couldn't breathe. And that's not another experience of plasma exchange in the hospital. But the reality is when they get those shots, their infections are much less and much less severe, and it does benefit them. And that's where that cost benefit analysis. Do I like holding my son for a shot? Absolutely not. But I also know the years that he didn't have the shot and when he got sick, and the years when he did have the shot and didn't get sick, or if he got sick, it was a very short while. And that was a big difference. I've had friends whose kids were hospitalized, same age as my kids, with the flu. So it's that benefit analysis. You've got to figure out what is needed for your kids or adult to be healthy as possible. And for him, he doesn't have that fear now for the needles, and now he can get the shot, go right in and get the shot, and walk out, and he's fine.
You don't think that that's part of a conditioning mind control program? I don't want to really get that hard down on you, but I mean, there's this book right here. Everyone should get this book, Rockefeller Medicine Men, and learn about the history of Western medicine. Okay. And I'm totally against it, just to let you know that I'm against this medical establishment as it stands right now. They don't, as far as I can tell, they're carrying out eugenics depopulation program. And I would like to warn you and every disabled person, you're high up on the list to kill because you're the most vulnerable.
Okay. And I hear you. I do. I absolutely hear you. And for me, we weigh each vaccine. We look at what happens if they don't get it, what happens if they do get it, and what possible side effects, right? And what possible side effects if they don't get the vaccine. And that has been something that has been on our mind. And right now, my kids are still wearing masks. They're to outdoor camp, well, it's a secret camp, but they're wearing masks. They are doing the best that they can to protect themselves and to protect me, right? Because they don't want to come home sick and get me sick. And right now, my kids are extremely protective of me. So every time I want to leave the house, I get a lecture. But it is a balance, and it is still a balance to be heard. It is finding a way.
I believe that. I believe that you do have a very marginalized voice for sure.
Right. And that impacts our medical care. That impacts our access to care. It impacts the type of medical care. I mean, each year we're advocating for funding for the paralysis center with the Reese Foundation, right? Every year you have to advocate for the one center that has all the information for people of what to do if they get paralyzed or they have a neuromuscular condition that impacts their ability to walk. It is a very small voice that we have right now, and we tried to get in legislations, but even this past year, we tried to get California to fund a rare disease caucus. It did not get funded. It was not included in the budget, and people are still writing letters for it to be included, but it was not included. It went into committee and not make it out of committee.
Do you know that the state of California was sterilizing women in prison as late as the 1980s? This state of California that we live in, the great liberal utopia, is nothing nice at all. It's a eugenics depopulation program that they're running here, the medical system, and it's veiled as liberalism and caring about everyone. And that's what I'm trying to expose on the show.
No, and I appreciate that. And, there is a lot that's not okay. There's a lot of things.
There's a whole lot that's not okay. With the year 2022, they've gone beyond the pale now, in my opinion.
I'm not sure if you know this, but women that are disabled can't adopt in many states.
Women that are disabled cannot adopt.
Wow. What kind of disability is that limited to? Is that limited to?
I know a friend of mine saying Elder Sandlos with me was trying to adopt, but because she couldn't carry a baby the 10 feet or whatever it was, I don't know the exact parameters of what that test was, but wasn't able to adopt. And she does have able-bodied adults in her home. She actually lives with her husband and parents, so there's 3 other able-bodied adults, but they denied her the ability to adopt. And that's and right before my son was born, my older son is a miracle child, actually because of acupuncture. But we didn't expect to be able to get pregnant. My husband and I have been together 27 years this August. My older son's 16, and we thought we would adopt. And around that time, we also learned other countries were no longer allowing people with disabilities to adopt either. And by the way, today, is Loving Day because of the Loving versus Virginia. We're talking about, how government is. That's for interracial couples being allowed to actually marry. It was out today. My husband is Korean. So, just noting all these.
I saw that the Vice President, Kamala Harris, tweeted about that. I saw that.
And I'm an interracial couple, right? Because I'm white, my husband's Korean, our kids look Korean. And so that was just another thing. And that was 1967, right? That wasn't that long ago before it was legal to have an interracial couple. Yeah, that was scary when you think about that. That it was in 1967 that it was finally okay by the Supreme Court to allow for interracial couple marriage.
So there's this documentary called Belly of the Beast. It says that this has been occurring still as of 2013, and probably still. And I would say it's happening more than ever before in history. Just people don't really realize it at this point in time that they're sterilizing women in prisons, etc. Just they don't realize that it's actually being done because it's a mass cover campaign like never before to do this. So
see, the liberals say, yeah. Let's flash back to 1967, where it's no longer illegal to have interracial marriage while they're sterilizing, minority women in prison. So the absurdity of our current situation is just beyond the pale in my mind. And yes, everyone should be able to marry whoever they want. I mean,
but you're talking about women that are minority status, right?
I'm talking about anybody should be able to marry anybody they want, but I'm talking about the way they cover up their crimes of the past and they don't own them and take any responsibility for what the heck really is going on.
When things are wrong, you have to say this is wrong.
Yeah.
Right. You have to admit, because in the medical community, there's been a lot of things that haven't always been great. Right?
And it's always covered up, and it's very rare that they own it and admit responsibility.
Well, and it impacts the communities, right? Because, for example, a lot of people of color who were impacted by sickle cell.
The marginalized are the most impacted for sure.
And there's a lot of distrust for the medical community.
There should be. Look at Tuskegee experiments as the most famous example as why the blacks should not trust the medical establishment. I mean,
and that's where one of the problems come in, right? Is that a lot of people of color, really, because of those experiments and other ones, right, are not
many. That's just the most famous one, the Tuskegee experiment.
The ability to communicate and speak out because they've already been marginalized in so many cases. And that's one of the things that I see as an advocate of how do we bring in diversity into the advocacy element, especially in the disability community where people have already been marginalized, already have negative experiences with the community, with medical communities. How do we give voice or space at the table for people to share their stories. And this year alone, I've learned from many women of color, not all women, but many women of color have had a very difficult time getting pain management and being told because of the color of their skin, they have a higher pain tolerance, right? And
what? Who's telling them that?
doctors, I know of at least half a dozen women of color who have been told this within the past 2 years.
That sounds crazy. Because of the pigmentation of their skin, they have a higher pain tolerance?
Yes.
That
And
sounds crazy to me. And doctors, quote, medical doctors are telling them this?
yes.
That sounds like a big story that should be told. Is there any type of physiological evidence of such a thing? I've never heard of such a thing.
I hadn't either, but as one was working in diversity arena before my disabilities progressed to where they are today, because my master's is focused on diversity, recruitment, and higher education. I wanted to start learning about how does this impact your ability as an advocate if you're a person of color or a woman of color with a disability, and it's or a woman of color who is also gay with a disability. How do
As
you
you
get
can tell, I'm not politically correct on this show, but yeah, the black, the dark pigmentation people, right, and their skin color. That's just amazing that they would say they have a higher pain threshold.
So one woman explained it to me as that it goes back to slavery, that people thought people of color had a higher pain tolerance. Now, I don't know this for certain. This is what she told me as her experience. But this is what I've had a lot of women this year tell me these are experiences they're having. I have women, who I've spoken to from other countries, right? And where women don't normally get the ability to speak up or be heard, being told that, and it's the United States too, that it's in our mind, that we can control it if we just change our mindset, and that it's all psychological, right? And that becomes a really big issue for pain management or any kind of health management. If we're always told it's in our head and not given the medical care or direction or information, that becomes a real issue. But that element of understanding, this is one thing I've been finding as I'm talking to people and advocates globally. I'm finding we all have this commonality of not always getting access to care, not always getting the pain management, not always being heard, but wanting to be part of our communities and wanting to give back and wanting to live life to the best of our abilities in whatever shape, way, or form that may be. I mean, whether it's from my chair, my bed, my wheelchair, whatever it is, I want to be of service to the communities. I want
So
to.
Vic, Deborah, what do you have to say to these people that don't even want to go to work? These people, perfectly healthy, young people, they don't even want to go to work anymore. What do you have to say to those type of people?
I don't get it. I really don't. I mean, I don't understand that because I can be lying in my bed, unable to stand or get up or even get to my wheelchair, and I still want to do something. I literally have a whole crafting section stationed next to my bed in my bedroom because there are days that I'm not getting in bed. There are days that it takes every ounce of energy to get to that bathroom and to get back to bed again. I mean, today, after we dropped the boys off at camp for going to camp, we just went to a local school to drop them off. I was so tired when I got home. I literally laid down, crashed, I just was out for hours. Apparently, my dog was too. It was kind of funny. I guess he was mimicking his mama. But, a simple act like that can drain me. And I don't get people not wanting to do something, right? Because honestly, I want to do way more than my body will allow me to do. And I want to, there's so much I want to do. So much I can't do. There is a lot that I can do, and I do it. But this is what I say to anybody. You don't know what tomorrow is going to hold. Tomorrow.
Nobody knows. You could walk outside your front door and get hit by a truck.
Tomorrow is never guaranteed. All we have is.
That's true.
I like to tell people, live it to the fullest of ability. Live your life like you don't have a tomorrow because you don't know what tomorrow holds. For me, my abilities constantly change, and often not for the better. Often it's a decline in my abilities. But I do try to live it to the best. I mean, even when I went skiing in the fall end of the season, right? I did it because I love to be active. I love to be part of the community. I was able to ski with my son, and that was amazing. So I think it's really important because I don't know what I'm going to be able to do tomorrow. Honestly, I may get out of bed. I may not be able to breathe well without a machine. So for me, I like to tell people we don't want to take advantage of what we have because it's really easy to forget what we have and take it for granted. I mean, I've even done it with simple things like my sight. I take it for granted at times, and then one day I couldn't see for a couple of days after one of my neurological exams, and I had to use voiceover software, and it was a challenge. But I almost was taking for granted that ability, right? I do a little bit of sign language, not a lot, just a little bit, but I have a little bit of an idea of what a lot of different groups of individuals, whether deaf, physically disabled, cognitively challenged, nonverbal, verbal, on the spectrum, neurodiverse, different elements of our communities. And so many people want to do things. And often our bodies are not in agreement with what we want to do. So my suggestion for people is just live it to the best of your ability and live it to make a difference, right? Because in my perspective, I want to leave a mark on our communities. I'm not saying I want to die tomorrow, but if it was to not be here tomorrow, I want people to remember that I was striving to make this world a little bit better, to make our communities better, to enhance our societies. And that is by all of us having space and a place in our community, which isn't there yet. But that is what I'd love to be able to see, is that space for all of us.
Yeah, I think the remote work culture now probably delivers a lot of opportunities, a lot more opportunities than were potentially to get a lot, open up the door to people with disabilities, instead of them traveling so much or whatnot. These kind of things certainly seems like it would do that. I mean, certainly us on the other side of the world in a Cambodia, third world country, it certainly creates opportunities for us to connect. And,
you got lazy Americans don't want to work. I mean, that's the bottom line of it for me, because there's help wanted signs everywhere. And they should look at Deborah and other disabled people that get out there and want to work and say, hey, lazy American, perfectly healthy young person, get off your butt and do something, for crying out loud.
And I also think more part-time jobs should be made available because there are people like me who want to do something and can't work full-time. And I know I can't work full-time. I know that, but I can work part-time. And often the type of jobs that I'd like to be involved with would be advocacy, public speaking, engagement programs, education programs. Don't have part-time jobs. They only have full-time opportunities. I've seen great advocacy positions in organizations that do advocacy work, even in farmer communities having advocacy positions, but they're always full-time. And the reality is there are a lot of people like myself who would be thrilled to work part-time in a job where they can make a difference. And often those are not opportunities. I mean, I was even this past year looking for part-time positions that I can do with my disabilities, and I was having a really hard time finding one. I mean, there was tons of jobs like for Amazon drivers, but I don't have a license anymore, right? There was tons of jobs for that, but the jobs that I would do as an educator or a scientific, or scientific as I'm doing that, as an advocate or as an educator, I was having a hard time finding part-time. I did find a tutoring position where I can tutor via Zoom or a closed system into a classroom, working with kids K through 8 to help them that are behind in reading or math or other language skills. And I did find that job. But it's really hard to find a part-time job that can be done from home with disabilities that fits within our spectrum of what we can do, because often they're being created as full-time positions. And that unfortunately is really sad, because I've seen a dozen or so positions this past year that I would have loved to be part of, and part-time wasn't offered.
Well,
I that for the companies too.
well, young, healthy people should feel blessed. I feel blessed. I'm not young, but I'm healthy still, and everyone should feel blessed that we are in that situation that we're. If you're not disabled, and take full advantage of it, and stop being a bum in society, for crying out loud. Thomas, you pulled up this eugenics and scientific racism for the NIH website. What is this about?
Yeah, the National Institutes of Health, of course, made famous now by Anthony Fauci and his bouncing back and forth, flopping, and his 40 to 55 cycle PCR tests, higher than the 100% positive rate of even 32. So the NIH going through, education piece about the selective breeding of populations and what is eugenics, and of course, this idea of genomic communities working, racism against, particularly people of color, people with disabilities, LGBTQ individuals, etc. The teacher saying that they're working to debunk eugenics myths and combat modern day manifestations of eugenics and scientific racism. So they're talking about the issue here and say, they define it as a scientifically erroneous and immoral theory of racial and plant breeding, which they say gained popularity during the 20th century, but we see daily from people like Yuval Harari of the World Economic Forum, the Club of Rome, who's insistently talking about the overpopulation, and they're on television saying we need to reduce the population down to less than 1 billion people. We have Jane Goodall of the United Nations saying that we need to go even further than that and reduce the human population down to 500 million. I mean, how else are you going to do that other than mass genocide? They don't have a suggestion. And then they're talking about scientific racism, arguing for the superiority of white Europeans and the inferiority of non-white people, and against disabled people as well. So the NIH has information.
I'm telling you, that's always been, disabled people are their easiest target to kill first. That's like number one on eugenics. Babies actually first, because they're actually the most vulnerable, and then disabled, and then minorities, and you go down the list of vulnerable populations of people, and that's who these scientific elites have on their list to exterminate with their depopulation program.
Yeah, and they show here the Nazis in Germany, Austria, and other places, they euthanized at least 70,000 adults. Of course, we know it's far more than that. But
liberals never want to talk about this, Thomas. Quote liberals, they're not even liberal Democrats. I don't even know what you call them. The left side of the political spectrum doesn't want to address this issue, but yet they jump up and down and say we care about the marginalized community, and that's my problem. I care about them too. Let's talk about this major elephant in the room.
Right, but it wasn't only Germany by the 1920s. That's only 100 years ago. But then, of course, this continued, and it still exists today. And they were forced sterilizing at least till 2013, and they're doing it now as well. But it was not only Germany. This is everywhere, worldwide. It was a global movement. NIH telling you so, and you can't question science. Fauci is science. You can't dare question these things, of course, right? So there was popular elite governmental support for eugenics in the United States, Great Britain, Italy, Mexico, Canada, and other countries, of course, across the 14 Eyes Nations, formerly the Five Eyes Nations. And they went after, of course, individuals with disabilities, like Yuval Harari is talking about, labeling them all as useless eaters, as he's done. Really just disgusting attitude that this guy has towards anybody that's not rich elites at the World Economic Forum. So very strange, this kind of scientific racism. I don't see them mentioning Yuval Harari in here. They should include him, of course. Maybe we should make a official suggestion to the NIH to include a prime example, the advisor to the World Economic Forum, right? Which is, supposedly the thought leadership of the world is scientific eugenics racism against anyone that's not a rich elitist. Very interesting. What kind of thought leadership do we have there? So they have Holocaust Encyclopedia and eugenics, the entire a lot of history on it and the development about it. But of course, they're not actually going to ever mention these elites. And Anthony Fauci is famously known to be, an advisor and business partner with the Good Club, right? This group of famous, wealthy American and international elites that are radical campaigners for depopulation around the world, including Ted Turner was before, and Bill Gates and Warren Buffett's partner, and a lot of the mainstream media anchors and executives, and it just goes on. Of course, Bill Gates' father.
We're not seen. There used to be, well, still kind of really is the mentality of not to be seen or heard, to get what you need to survive or be in your home, and not to be, not to be seen. Because and this goes to across the globe, but especially in the United States, anything that you need devices to be able to access society, unless it's medically necessary to get to a doctor's office, it's not covered, right? So then you need to pay out of pocket to get the tools you need to be able to access going anyways. I mean, when I go to DC, when I go places, it's not only is out of pocket, all of the adaptive tools that I need are out of pocket, right? So very few people are being seen, nonetheless heard. And for the thought process to really change, we need to be included. And this is a bipartisan issue. Inclusion of people with disabilities, clearly a bipartisan issue, right? It doesn't matter where your political line is, we have to be included, and we have to be heard, and we have to be given the tools needed to leave our homes so that we can go and be part of these discussions, part of these meetings, part of being not just known about, but seen, heard, and included. Because I gotta tell you, when people meet me, they start to think differently about people with disabilities. And it's not that I'm this representative of all people with disabilities. I'm just a very hardworking, stubborn individual. And you can see my determination, and I'm a native New Yorker, whether you want to call it my native New Yorkerness, stubbornness, determination, all the way above. It definitely gives me a drive that may not be the same as other people. And I benefit because my husband has a job, and I get to buy many of the equipment and tools that I need to be active. And yet I still have to fight for things like oxygen, IV fluids, and other.
Tell us about that. How, because there's been a lot of reports of lack of oxygen supply. How's been your experience accessing oxygen now through the whole COVID? Because there's been a high demand for oxygen during COVID because everyone the major symptom of COVID is you can't breathe, and so we need to give COVID patients oxygen. So how's been your experience with the supply of oxygen?
I did have a problem. So I have an oxygen concentrator. One of mine broke. I was actually on my first weekend event just for women that I met at a retreat that we were doing. My concentrator broke. My husband, this big guy he is, found one on not in Clubhouse. He found one on Craigslist, and I was in LA, and he brought it up to me, and we bought it that way, and that started breaking. It took me 6 months of advocating and threatening, as well to bring legal action for denying me my access to something that I was supposed to have, and complaining that if I did not receive it, I would have to go to the state and file a complaint. And I finally got it 6 months later. So it was a fight multiple times. Sorry, my talk is really silly right now. It was a fight multiple times over to get this last concentrator, and it's a lot of work to get these things. Even my first time getting oxygen, I had to, and this was before COVID, I had to appeal to the state, show how I could not carry a canister with me places, because that's what they wanted me to do. But I use a wheelchair, I'm very weak, and to carry multiple canisters a day just to get to the doctor's office was not feasible. So I had to appeal to the state to be able to get my concentrator. And these are things that people don't always. I'm so sorry, my doggy is being silly right now. These are not things that people necessarily know the rights to, right? And I had to appeal to the State Board of Health to get my first oxygen concentrator. I did. Once I was able to speak to doctors and showcase what was happening, I was told, we don't need to make sure you get to the school, because I also volunteered at the school and a scout leader. And it wasn't, and my actual denial was, it's not our job to get you to these extracurricular programs or the school or these other things. It's just our job to get you to the doctor's office. So that's all we're covering. In my case, my doctor's office was hours away. And when I would go to see the doctor, I would take a train up. It would literally an entire day event to go see my doctors. And this is another Bay Area, taking the train up to San Francisco to be able to see my doctors in San Francisco. Or a $75 Uber drive each direction. Again, not feasible cost-wise for a lot of people. So it's been a fight, and it took me years to get IV fluids. The plasma, I'm glad you brought that up. The plasma shortage is real.
I wonder, speak about that, because I saw that when you were actually featured here in this newspaper article, right, about the plasma shortage. What is going on with that?
That's my source doggy. Sorry.
That's your dog right there?
That's PETA. He has been with me for 1.5 years. So yes, I was actually getting plasma exchange here, and plasma is used for a lot of autoimmune conditions. So the plasma donations are very important, and we had a decrease in plasma donations, especially with COVID, with people being homebound, because many times the schools, or the colleges and the universities are common places where people donate plasma from. They would go to the centers and they would donate plasma, and they get compensated for it. They have a very strict screening process for plasma donations, so they have a certain process. And with the closure of a lot of schools and doing virtual schooling, a lot of people were not going out and donating plasma. And then you actually have more people using plasma because it is a treatment for a lot of long haul COVID and other challenges. So there was a decrease in the supply and an increase in the demand. And that becomes a challenge. I mean, for me, plasma is a bi-weekly treatment that I get. My IVIG treatments, I get that every other week.
Are you concerned about the spike protein from the injected people possibly being in the plasma? The mainstream media reported very widely that the Red Cross was allowing blood to be donated after getting the supposed COVID-19 vaccines, but not plasma. They were blocking that for a while and then putting restrictions on it. I showed the link of this. Here we go. It's up on the screen. And that was really strange to see all of the so-called fact checkers immediately go and attack this and lie through their teeth that supposedly the Red Cross was right. And then other organizations went and got it right off the Red Cross to show that indeed they said that. I have that as well with that.
So now, non-convalescent plasma is different than the plasma that I would get because they have different requirements for like for COVID patients, right? And versus the plasma that I get doesn't even come with blood donations at the Red Cross. So it's very specific. It's only, I don't remember how many, but it's only a select number of locations in the United States we can donate plasma for some of these plasma treatments. So that interview that I was in 2 years ago had a link to some of those locations. Like in the United States, state of California, for example, when I lived in Morgan Hill, the closest place was north of San Francisco. right? So it wasn't the traditional Red Cross locations to donate plasma. Do I get concerned about anything with plasma? Because of course, because it is a human byproduct, right? I mean, it is supposedly checked, right? It is supposedly tested, but it is still a human by donation, right? So there's always a risk, and that is something that I take into account. However, the reality is, without my plasma, I'm a lot worse off. So I know this is one of those things where you have to look at possible things that could happen for plasma donations, and look at my functionality without it, right? In my case, I can't function without it, and I'm barely moving today. I'm due for my plasma treatment. I'm getting one tomorrow and Tuesday, and I know I need it, right? And I can barely. My wakeness is a good 9 today out of 10. It was barely getting out of bed, and that's not fun. I mean, it's not fun when I can't move. It is a scary situation, both with, and I'm seeing with the which you're putting up on the screen right now too. It's scary because you don't know what's going to happen, right? And nobody.
It's scary to think about what is the state of our blood supply for people that need blood transfusions, plasma transfusions, so on and so on. What is the state of our blood supply in America and the whole world, for that matter, with the release of this bioweapon COVID-19? It's with the spike protein running around. It's very, very concerning. And I've seen the meme that unvaccinated sperm is worth more than Bitcoin, than gold, and so it begs the question: is there a true high value to people that can supply bodily fluids that do not have the spike protein in them? And I think it does demand a premium in the market of bodily fluids for medical purposes. And so I will demand the highest price for my spike proteined bodily fluids. Any comments on that extreme comment I just made?
I don't reply to that. Not trying to. I will say it is a concern. I mean, it's my last hospitalization. Oh my gosh. Sorry. My dog is taking a cat food now. Oh, goodness gracious. I'm sorry. I have a zoo going on right now. My dog just got the cat trees, and the cat chasing.
No, sure. I'm ready. I'm ready to wrap it up right now too. I got my animals and kids going crazy. So yeah, let's wrap up the show. Let's plug your stuff. Let me throw up your. What's the best way for people to get a hold of you? I got your Facebook page here. What's the best way? Your Twitter. Go follow Deborah on her Facebook page.
So I am in the Miss Wheelchair USA competition, so that's why that post is up. I am in the competition.
Twitter.
I am on Twitter. I'm forward rolling on Twitter, LinkedIn, Clubhouse, Instagram. I do have Snapchat. I've not used it yet though.
And
but
then your website.
My website, Victorious. So this is our nonprofit, really created to uplift, inspire, and engage people of all abilities, from the classroom to the boardroom, and really create that inclusive community and raise that bar of awareness and inclusivity across the board.
Yeah, everybody, we encourage you to get involved with assisting people with physical challenges, disabilities, etc. If you're not sure how to do that, get in touch with Deborah Vick and reach out and make a donation. Follow her and support, subscribe to her channels and whatnot. Give her a support. Follow and see more of what she's doing and what she's advocating for. It's absolutely fantastic. She's got a really energy and positive spirit. Really focused on these issues and campaigns. That's really difficult to see. We all need to stand up and defend protect these people, protect their rights, and fight for them to include them in society and not go down the roads of this, Nazi eugenics type of just really crazy attitudes like the World Economic Forum is trying to force society into. We need to include these people. They're human beings. We need to respect human life and promote these people and include them and give them jobs, etc. I cannot wait until our startup is fully funded. I really look forward to hiring disabled people. It's kind of one of my dreams actually is to have many disabled people working for us. Include this constant innovators, always innovators' minds into what we're doing. We're always making new technology, and I think having that mindset around will be incredibly positive for us in so many ways. So I can't wait to do that. So please support Deborah Vick and what she's doing, and support her campaign for Miss Wheelchair USA. I'm certainly doing it, and it's so wonderful to have Deborah here on the show.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you, Deborah, for your time coming on. You're an inspiration. You should be an inspiration for the youth and the able-bodied of this country to get off your butt and go do something. If she can do it with all these health conditions, anybody can do it. And so take a look at her for inspiration. Go to her website, victorious.org. Follow her on her Twitter. You can see that at the bottom, rolling forward. Everybody do your own research. Subscribe to this channel. Speak out and take action. Peace, love, and liberty, and have